I wanted to start by sharing something. After I finished my meditation, and woke up, I went on Instagram just to look and see if there were any comments, and I've been sending people direct messages too, so I wanted to check on those. And I got this message from someone that was horrifying. I mean, it was like, basically, you're not an INFJ because you're overweight. And they called me Karen and some kind of other something. And I was like, first of all, I mean, obviously I didn't respond and I totally blocked that person. We don't need any of that kind of energy here. But I wanted to tell you about it because 3 years ago, if somebody would have said that to me or would have even sent me a message like that, I would have been like devastated. I would have never gone on Instagram Live again. I would never share pictures of myself. I wouldn't do videos. I mean, I was scared in the beginning to do all of those things because I didn't want people saying negative things about me. And obviously I know that I'm overweight, right? That's a problem for me. It's been a problem for the majority of my life. But I didn't want people to say things about me, right? But so much has changed internally for me in the last 3 years that people can say stuff like that and it's like, wow, how rude are you? But I'm not going to let you stop me. I'm not going to let you hold me back from doing what I want to do. This is my calling in life. And just because you have a negative opinion about people who are overweight, that's not going to change how I live my life. It's not going to change what I do today. It's not going to change how I feel about myself. It's just such a huge change. One of my friends yesterday, I was texting her and she called me fearless. And I was like, that doesn't describe me. But then I started thinking about it like more, and I've been thinking about it all day today. It's just been like ringing in my head, and I'm like, maybe it's true. Maybe I have changed so much that I don't even recognize myself. I think sometimes we, as INFJs, we go through these periods of just like super growth. You know, like when you have a little kid and they grow so fast that you buy them new clothes and their clothes don't fit like 3 days later because they're just growing so fast. I think it's kind of like that, you know, we just go through these times of like spiritual and emotional growth that sometimes we have to take a second to like recognize ourselves again. I think that's why I focus so much on understanding, because a lot of people say, you know, how can you not understand yourself? But for me, it's like a constant understanding. I'm writing my second book and it's called Relentless Understanding. And I love the title so much because I feel like that's how you have to be. You have to be continually growing and understanding. And it's a process that just keeps going, you know? It's like as soon as you understand yourself, or you think that you do, you've changed again and you have to start the process over again, which is good. And yeah, it's nice. I mean, obviously people are always going to be rude as long as there's the internet and they can hide behind their fake social media accounts and not have to say those things face to face. Then, you know, they'll say whatever they want. But the great thing is that we get to choose how to respond to them. And I kind of want to do a poll. I want to see how many other INFJs are overweight, because I feel like it's not like an INFJ thing. Like, you can be overweight whether you're an INFJ or not. And I know several INFJs, some who have been on my podcast, some who are just my friends, and at least half of the ones that I know are overweight. So to say that is just so rude that, you know, you're not this personality type because you have blonde hair. That's ridiculous. Anyway, okay, so, I did want to tell you something super cool. If you haven't heard yet, I'm doing some free workshops next week. If you are interested in being fearless too, if you want to break free from all of the things that people have told you that are so not true. Somebody who's already in the Facebook group, she said that she wants to deprogram all of the things that people have fed us. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing next week. If you want to be a part of that, you can still be a part of it. You can go to infjwoman.com/hereforthis and join our group. It's free. There's going to be workshops every single day next week. And also Saturday, Sunday, and then the next week too. So there's tons and tons of free information. It's a total transformation. You definitely should check it out if that's something that you need. And don't we all need transformation? Don't we all need better energy? I'm sure that every single one of us has some kind of a change that we're trying to make in our lives, whether you hate your job or you just feel like you're miserable or you want to move to a different place. I mean, we could all use some more confidence, right? Okay, so tonight we are talking about my book, which I have. It is the INFJ User Guide. And if you don't have a copy yet, you can get one on Amazon. It's available in the Kindle format and then also the paperback, which is what this is. We're talking about chapter 9 tonight, which is all about communication and all about how INFJs communicate and how other people communicate too, which is such important information for us. I mean, this is like life-changing here. I started the chapter by talking about how it's important for us to understand not only our own communication style, but other people's communication style as well. So this one stat that's really interesting to me is personality type distribution. So there are only 2 personality types who have the same dominant function as we do. So our personality type and then INTJs have introverted intuition as a dominant function. And then the second function, which is also just as important as the primary function, we share that with ENFJs and ENTJs. So there are only 4 personality types that have either our dominant or auxiliary personality type. That only makes up not quite 8% of the population of the world. So when you're talking to people, it's important to realize that most people don't think like you do. They don't organize their thoughts the same way that you do. They don't gather information the same way that you do. They don't process that information the same way. It's different. And that was like one of the biggest eye-opening things for me when I started learning about personality types, because I think that when we're young, we just naturally think that people think the same way that we do. We think that they should think the same way that we do, at least. And it's just sort of one of those assumed things that we don't really spend a lot of time going, hold on, that's not actually how it is. This was blatantly obvious to me. I worked in this job for a while. I was a kind of like a PR manager for a marketing company that managed professional athletes. And the boss that I had there, I'm not sure exactly what his personality type. There was definitely some narcissism involved in whatever type he was. I'm pretty sure that he was a sensing type, though, definitely extroverted. Probably perceiving too, because he was not good at making decisions. And it wouldn't surprise me if he was like a thinking type as well, because he was just like completely opposite of everything that I was. And I didn't really understand personality types back then, so I didn't really grasp everything that was going on. But what would happen is, I was a marketing manager, so we did a lot of digital marketing. I did graphic design as well. And so I would make these sales presentations that were to attract new clients for us. And so he would come into my office and be like, hey, we have this new potential client. I need for you to put together a sales deck, is what he called them. And then he would start telling me about like the process and, you know, we're going to have to go and meet with these people. And he would be like explaining everything in detail and talking about like the first simple steps. And for me, the way that I process information is like I'm going 1,000,000 miles a minute. I'm 12 steps ahead of him, and I'm asking him questions that are like 12 steps ahead of where he is. And he would get super frustrated with me, and he would say over and over again, I forget what his phrase was, you're not understanding me, or you're not hearing me, or something. And he would like start at the beginning again. And he's like, no, you don't understand what I'm saying. So let's circle back to the beginning. And I would get really angry because I was like, why is he treating me like I'm stupid? Like, I understand everything that he's saying. He doesn't, you know, like what's the issue here? Why is he so mean? And then this would happen like multiple times and until I finally just stopped talking. And then he would be like, fine, you know, that would be okay. As long as I wasn't asking questions, then he was like, oh, okay, then you must get it. So it took me a few months of working with him before I realized what was happening, that he couldn't see the whole plan of something. He could only see the first few steps. That's why he was working on and so focused on the first few steps. What was right in front of him, that's all he could see. Something just happened. I don't know why it paused. Hopefully it's still there. He couldn't see 10 or 12 steps into the future. He could only see the first 2 or 3 steps, right? That's why he was so focused on those. I was looking at 10, 12, 15, 20 steps ahead, and he couldn't see them. It didn't make any sense to him because that's not how he thought. So once I realized that, then I was like, oh, okay, I don't need to ask him questions about 12 steps down the road because he doesn't get it. He can't see that far. It's beyond his reasoning ability. It's beyond his insight. He can't see it. And it was really a big thing for us too because, excuse me, we would plan events that were a year in advance. And I would be planning and saying, you know, like, we need a map for the guests that we're bringing to this event. Not only do we need a tent, but we need chairs, we need napkins, you know, because there's going to be food there. And like, I would be thinking about all of these little details, and he would be like so overwhelmed that he was like, why would you talk about that right now? This is a year in advance. And then what would happen is we would get to the event and he's like, why don't we have napkins? And I was like, well, you know, that's your fault. I told you we needed them. I told you we needed a map. So obviously we didn't work very well together. He wouldn't ever put me in charge of those things. He wouldn't recognize that I was better at planning things than he was because, you know, like I said, he was very narcissistic. So that didn't work out very well for him. So it was important, though, to recognize that he thinks about things differently. He planned things differently. He organized his thoughts differently. And all that it took for our arguments to stop is for me to recognize he thinks about things differently. He can't see into the future like I can. He can't see 5 or 10 steps down the road. He can only see what's right in front of him. And having that understanding made all the difference in the world. There are a lot of people who will say things like, well, you're so arrogant and you're so rude by claiming that you're better than everybody else. I'm not trying to say that we as INFJs are better or worse than anybody else. That's not my goal. I'm trying to help myself and to help other people understand how different people communicate, how different people organize their thoughts, how different people organize their life. Once you can do that, then you can stop a lot of the miscommunication that goes on. You can stop a lot of the argument. You can stop so much. It's not better to be focused on the future. There's a downfall to that too, is that we can't really focus on the present very well. We're not good at small details that are happening right in front of us. So you kind of need a balance of both types of personalities to be able to handle both situations. If everybody was focused on the future, nothing would happen today. It wouldn't work out very well. So it's important to remember that we think differently, we organize our thoughts differently than other people do. Then, like, what did I say, 8%? 8% of the population, so that's like 92% of the population. We think differently than they do. I've read that INFJs think in terms of pictures. Now, obviously, I can only tell you what goes on in my head. I don't know. I've never really asked people. I've tried to ask people, but they look at me like I'm super strange. I always think in terms of pictures. In the inside of my head is like a movie theater. I see what I want to happen, and I see future possible scenarios like a movie. I don't know if other people don't see that like that. I feel bad for them if they don't. Maybe that's why some people don't have so much intuition, or they don't focus on it so bad, because if you can't see the pictures, then how does that work? I'm not really sure. But that's definitely how I organize things. It's also important to realize that because of our intuition, we take in so much information that we don't even know that we're taking in. It can be details about people. It can be stories, facts, ideas, and all of it, we figure out how to connect all of it together, right? So because of all of those connections, we remember a lot of things. This has become very blatantly obvious to me. And you can see behind me, I have some posters. Well, they're like programs from New Kids on the Block concerts. And I've only recently, in the last 5 years, maybe became a New Kids on the Block fan. And so I was like, I'm going to make up for lost time, right? So I've watched tons of videos on YouTube. I've been to a bunch of concerts. I've read a lot of other people's stories. I've listened to podcasts of people talking about them. I've listened to a lot of their interviews. And I connect a lot of the information that I've collected, which INFJs do this a lot. Whether you're obsessed with New Kids on the Block or true crime or whatever it is, we tend to get obsessed with things and learn all the things about it. So for me, it just happened to be New Kids on the Block this time. But I take in all this information and have connected the dots and the patterns in a lot of it. And so when I hang out with new people who are New Kids fans, I start talking about them, and there's all of this information, and they're like, how do you know that? Like, how do you remember all of that? And I'm like, oh, I watched this video, and I'm pretty sure it's from this tour from this year. Oh, and then this interview, they were talking about the same thing, and it was with this guy from this radio station, and they're like, how do you know that? Like, oh, is that weird? Do people not know that? Is that not how you guys don't remember stuff like that? Okay, I'll stop talking. It's kind of embarrassing because you remember so much, you know? And we were talking about one of them, and I was like, well, I know that he drives a Tesla, so every time I'm around Boston, I'm always like looking for a bluish gray Tesla. And they're like, how do you know that his car is bluish gray? I'm like, well, he posted a picture of it on Instagram one time. And they're like, one time, and you remembered what the car looked like and what the color was? And I'm like, you didn't? How did you miss that? I mean, I know it was kind of in the background, but like, how did you miss that? Is that weird? Okay. All right. I'll stop talking because I don't want to be like super weird. There's something else that was really, really important in this chapter too, that I wanted to tell you, and it's kind of a story. But I want to tell you the story because it was like this big, big epiphany for me. And part of it is, I don't even remember where, I talked about manipulation a little bit, recently, sometime this week, I think. And it's definitely part of our communication style, especially those of us, which I think is the majority of us, who fall into the people-pleasing category. Because of our intuition, our ability to be able to see what other people need, and then our extroverted feeling where we can feel what they're going through, we want people to be comfortable, right? We want them to be happy. And so we're really good at figuring out what they need and giving that to them. And sometimes it kind of backfires on us quite a bit. So in the summer of 2019, I was looking for an apartment, and I found this apartment that was on the ocean, and it was gorgeous. And it was less than what I was expecting to pay for an apartment. The downside was it was in like the basement of this lady's condo, and she was like, her youngest daughter had just went off to college. And so I knew that she was like empty nest syndrome, like looking for another daughter. And I was about the same age, and we were both from Kansas. And so she was like, oh, this is going to be perfect. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, but okay. I really loved the apartment, right? So she even said to me, like when I was signing the lease, she said things like, if you get sick, I can bring you like some soup, and we should go out to dinner, and you could just come upstairs and have dinner with me and my sister. And I was like, that's not really my jam, but I wanted to be nice to her. So I didn't say anything that was too like rude. But basically as soon as I moved in, she started like cleaning my apartment when I wasn't there, which wasn't cool because she was moving my stuff around, and to me that was like going through my stuff. And there were several things that she did that were like totally horrible. Like she opened my mail. She insisted that I use the door in her condo rather than the outside door. I mean, there were several things that seemed kind of like narcissistic, manipulative to me. And I just didn't like it very much. And I was like, this condo is like super, the apartment that I was in was like super nice. And I loved being on the ocean, but dealing with her got to be like a lot. So she had told me when I signed the lease that if there was ever a problem that I could leave. And as long as I gave her like a month's notice, that was fine. Like, it didn't matter that the lease was for a year. So I was like, okay, cool. So I had been there about 6 months, and I had finally had enough. And I was like, I found another apartment and told her that I was leaving. And I did it in the nicest possible way that I could. And she got super mean. She was like, you owe me $8,000 and I'm going to call a lawyer. And I'm like, cool, call your lawyer. I'll call my lawyer too, and we'll figure this out. Like, you broke the lease 7 different ways before I did, so it's your problem now. And that's exactly what I told her. Like, I was super straightforward and rude, and like, I don't care. I'm done being nice to you, basically. And so she kept sending me all these text messages, and a lot of them were like guilt trips that were like, you're not the person that I thought you were, and why are you treating me like this, and you're being so nasty, what's wrong with you? And of course I took it as like this personal attack, and like she's attacking my personality. Like, why would she do that? That's so rude. She doesn't even know me, so why would she be saying nasty things about me personally, right? So I was telling one of my friends about it, and one of the reasons that I love this particular friend is that she's very straightforward, and she sees through all the BS, and she'll tell you exactly how it is, right? And so she was like, Sarah, hello, the problem is you. And I'm like, what? What? No, you don't understand. She opened my mail. She went through my things. Like, she did my dishes. How weird is that? That is not okay. It's against the law for you to go into somebody's apartment. Even if you're the landlord, it's against the law. And my friend is like, no, the problem is you, and here's why. You told her that you were a nice person. That's what you showed her for 6 months. You were nice to her and friendly, and you never told her that there was a problem. And then all of a sudden, there was a problem. And you're truly not the nice person that you said that you were. You just pretended to be that person, and you never told her there was a problem. So when you finally decided to tell her there was a problem, then you turned into this nasty person, and you're truly not the person that she thinks that you were. So the problem is you. It's not her. You've like manipulated her into thinking that you're somebody that you're not. I was like in shock. I was like, I manipulated her? Like, really? I mean, it wasn't intentional. But then the more that I thought about it, the more I was like, oh yeah, that's true. I did. I should have told her there was a problem in the beginning. I should have told her there was a problem when she said, oh, I can bring you soup. I should have been like, oh no, I don't like that. That's not cool. In fact, I should have never rented the apartment because I had that feeling that, she wanted a daughter, and that's not what I was, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted peace and quiet. I wanted to be left alone. I didn't want her in my apartment cleaning my house. Like, that wasn't okay. So it was kind of this huge epiphany for me. And then I started thinking about all of the other friendships that I have and how many times I've just went along with what other people said without saying, no, that's not okay. I have a lot of friends, because I'm like 35, most of my friends have families, they have kids, they have husbands, so some of them, when we make plans to go out to dinner or something, they'll be like, oh, I'm going to bring my kids and my husband. And I'm like, oh. I don't say anything because like, I don't want to be rude, but inside I'm going, I don't want to be like the third wheel or like the fifth wheel. Like, that's so rude. But I tell them that it's okay. And so then they think that it's okay. And then there's like this part of me that's like, I don't really want to go out with them anymore because it's not really okay. And the problem is that I've never told them that it's not okay. And so how would they know that it's not okay if they ask me and I'm like, yeah, that's totally fine. And there's so many other examples of that too. Like, when your friends are like, hey, do you want to go, like, what restaurant do you want to go to? There's this really cool Thai restaurant. And you're like, cool, sure, yeah, whatever you want. And really you hate Thai food. And you're like thinking if you've ever had Thai food that you liked and wondering if there's even anything on the menu. I mean, yes, discomfort over resentment. That's true. Yeah, I want everybody else to be comfortable. Because if they're not comfortable, then I'm not comfortable. And I can't handle not being comfortable because they're not comfortable. I would rather be uncomfortable knowing that they are comfortable. It's this weird contortion of things, but, if I speak up and make them uncomfortable, then they're uncomfortable and I'm uncomfortable and everybody's uncomfortable. And it just doesn't, like, I can't operate like that. It doesn't work. Anytime that I speak up and say, like, this is what I want, and everybody else goes, oh, I hate that, then it's like, ooh, now everybody's uncomfortable, and this is weird. Now I don't ever want to say anything again, ever. But the thing is that we have to learn how to be uncomfortable, which is icky and gross, and it's not fun. But we're either going to have to live with, like you said, resentment, or walking away from all of our friends because we've told them that we're okay when we're not really okay, Or we're going to have to learn how to be uncomfortable and say, you know what? I really don't like Thai food. Can we try something else? Here are 3 restaurants that I like. Does that work? Do you like any one of these? Can we try something else? You have to learn how to stand up and say, you know what? I know it's been a while since I've seen you, but I really don't want to go have dinner with you and your husband. And please, dear God, don't bring your kids. I mean, I know you think they're cute, but they're loud. And I'm not really a kid person, you know? And it's difficult. I'm not saying that it's easy, because it's not. It is so incredibly difficult. There have been friendships that I've had in the past where I have literally rather walked away from them as my friends than said, that's not okay. And I think that that's where part of the notorious INFJ door slam comes from, because we would much rather just walk away from people than say, hey, this isn't okay. But the thing is that if you can live with being uncomfortable a little bit, then you build up your confidence and you start to understand that you deserve better. And you deserve to be able to stand up and say, I don't like Thai food. Let's go somewhere else. And even though it feels really weird and terrible and awful the first time, the second time it'll feel a little bit better. And the 10th time it'll feel even better. And the 100th time that you do it, you'll be okay doing it. It's not the end of the world. And even though it feels super uncomfortable, it does get better. And then, plus then, your friends know you don't like Thai food, and that can just be one of your things. It's always been difficult for me to tell my friends that I'm a vegetarian. I don't like people to make like a big deal about it, especially when we go to restaurants, because I have like this childhood trauma around being different than other people as far as what I eat. And when I was young, nobody knew what a vegetarian was, right? And so I grew up in the Midwest part of the United States. There's a lot of like ranches out there with people who grow, like people who have cow farms and things like that. So, a lot of people eat meat and potatoes. That's the whole thing, right? So they didn't even know what a vegetarian was. Being vegan wasn't, like, nobody knew what the word vegan was when I was growing up. So when we went to restaurants, and my parents would always make me order, and it felt like torture because I was super shy. I would never talk to people. Like, even if they were sitting there talking to me, I didn't want to talk to them. When I was really young, I would hide behind my mom because I didn't want to even look at people. So when I had to sit there in a restaurant and people, it was always like a thing, It was like, I want fettuccine, but without the chicken. And they would be like, what? I'm like, I know it says chicken fettuccine, but like, can you just like not put the chicken on there? And they would be like, well, you still have to pay for the chicken. And I'm like, that's totally fine. I'll pay for it. I just don't want it. I don't understand. And I would be like, okay, so you know that there's chicken and there's fettuccine? Can you just like not put the chicken on there? And they would be like, I don't know what that means. And I'm like, we used to have this conversation in my family because it would happen like every time we went out to eat. We used to have this conversation like, are they stupid? Have they never heard of like fettuccine without chicken on it? Seriously? Why does it have to be like such a big thing? And so then finally it was always just like, whatever, just leave the chicken on there and just bring me an extra plate so that I can physically take it off and put it on a different plate so I don't have to like leave it on my plate and look at it while I'm eating. Well, we're gonna have to charge you for the other plate. It's fine, just freaking bring it. Like, why does the whole restaurant have to know what I'm ordering? So obviously for somebody who's shy and has a lot of anxiety and doesn't like to talk to people, that was like a traumatic experience. And it happened like every single time that we went out to eat. And so for me, it's like there's all this trauma around like, I don't want to be different. I already know that I'm different. I don't want it like flashing on my forehead. So when I'm going out to dinner with my friends, I'm like, please just don't pick like a seafood restaurant, and anything else than that is fine. I can find something to eat. And as soon as they know that I'm a vegetarian, they're like, oh, there's this great salad place. And I'm like, no, I don't really like salad. And they're like, what? You're a vegetarian and you don't like salad? And I'm like, do I have to explain like the whole thing again? It's just a lot. I just don't want to have a conversation about what I eat. It's funny how there's so much of things that happen to us when we were young, so much that you don't really think of as trauma, right? Because when I think of the word trauma, I think of something really horrifying. I think of like abuse. But I mean, obviously that is trauma, but there can be trauma in other places of your life. Stuff that maybe people told you just to get over or to not worry about, which a lot of people told me that about eating. And a lot of people told me that too, like, you shouldn't be vegetarian. It's wrong that you're a vegetarian. You're going to die. You're not healthy. You don't eat the right foods. So there was a lot of trauma around that too that was like, and for me, it pushed me farther into it. You know, when people tell me that there's something that I'm doing wrong, it's like, or that you shouldn't do that, I kind of had this attitude of like, oh, well, I really wasn't going to do it before, but now I'm going to do it twice and take pictures because, like, you can't tell me what to do. That's how it goes. Yeah, so the moral of this story is, the whole point of the chapter in this book on communication is a really rough point. It is to stop being fake. It kind of stings a little bit. It kind of stings a lot, actually. But, I mean, it's so important. It's important for us to stand up and say, I deserve better. It's important for us to understand that we deserve better and that we understand that people will like us even when we show them the real us. That maybe the friends that we have that we've just always been so agreeable around, maybe those aren't the right people. But there are people who will appreciate you for the way that you are. There are people who will appreciate your opinions as well. That was another thing that my parents always told me. You need to stop being so opinionated. You need to stop being so forward. You need to stop being so direct. It's rude and people don't like it and you shouldn't do it. And so I struggled with that for a long time. And then I met this friend just a couple of years ago. The one that I was telling you, she told me that I was the problem. She's all of those things. She's incredibly straightforward. She's very truthful about everything. If she doesn't like something, she will tell you. And she told me when I first met her, I worked with her, and she was like, oh, I'm incredibly lazy. And I was like, what? You just like say that to people? Like, you own that? And she's like, yeah, I don't want to like not be lazy. She's like, I want like to-go food. I want like fast food. I want to get all of my work done really quickly and efficiently so that I can not do work for most of the day. I'm like, dang, like it's okay for you to just like say that you're lazy? And she's like, well, who's going to tell me it's not okay? And I'm like, oh, I guess that makes sense. I mean, I don't think anybody would mess with you. And she's like, no, people don't mess with me because I tell them not to. And they get it from the tone of my voice. I'm like, wow, I'm envious of her. Like, when I first met her, I was like, ooh, I don't like you. But then after a couple of days, it was like, wow, I'm in awe. I'm envious. I wish that I could be that way too. And I've kind of like just been inspired from her, honestly, just about being honest, about being forward and direct. And she's also a great resource too. And a lot of people tell me that too. My friends know that when they ask me something, they're going to get the truth. Like, I don't hold back. And it's not that I'm trying to be rude to them. It's just that I'm honest. And a lot of times I don't even know where the line is. So I've gotten to where I ask them, like, do you want to hear what you want to hear, or do you want to hear the truth? You know, do you want me to agree with you, or do you really want to know what I think? And that's a way to, like, judge where they're feeling. Like, do you really want the truth, or do you just want somebody to listen to what you're saying? So when we're talking about communication for INFJs, if you have somebody in your life that you are struggling to communicate with, it could be really, really helpful if you know their personality type. I have, of course I don't have it in front of me, I have a free guide that I put together that will help you figure out your personality type. And it also helps you figure out other people's personality type as well. I was going to see if I can find the link real quick. Yeah, so the link is infjwoman.com/type workbook. If you want the workbook. And it gives you a basic 4-question quiz that will help you figure out anybody's personality type. And then there's also information about each one of the 16 personality types in there. So you can read about each one and see which one sounds more like you and which sounds more like the person that you're trying to type as well. Once you know what their type is, then it's so much easier to communicate with people. I know I use my niece as an example a lot, but she's an INTP. And before I knew that, it was difficult to communicate with her because she can't make a decision very well. She is even more honest than I am, and she doesn't think about people's feelings a lot. It's difficult for her. It doesn't come naturally for her. But once I realized what her personality type is, then it was like, oh, you have a perceiving personality type. You don't like to make decisions. You like to keep your options open. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you're different from how I am. And once I knew that she had a thinking personality type, then it made more sense that she doesn't focus on feelings. She focuses on facts and logic. That's how she is. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. It does make things difficult sometimes when you're talking about feelings, when you're talking about hurting somebody's feelings or getting into an argument. But it's helpful to know that's her personality type and that's where she's coming from. And I think that it helped her to know about my personality type too, and to know, like, she's coming to a situation from facts and logic and I'm coming from feelings. And so there are times when we butt heads about things because it's like, I'm saying, you hurt my feelings, and she's going, it doesn't matter, that's not the facts. Like, you were wrong on the facts. And I'm like, the facts don't matter, it's all about the feelings. And, but it's also a great way to be able to end a lot of arguments too, because, you know where the problem is. So again, if you want that workbook, it's free, and the link is infjwoman.com/type workbook. All right. I think that's basically the end of our chapter about communications. I mean, really, a lot of it is just about understanding. And the more that you understand, the better at communicating you'll be, especially if you understand the people that you're talking to. That's massive, and that's huge. I just wanted to mention one more time before I go, if you haven't signed up for my workshop yet that I'm doing next week, please make sure that you do. It is called Here for This. It is all about unlearning all of the stuff that people have told you that's not true. Things like, INFJs can't be overweight. What? Who came up with that? On Monday, we're going to talk about breaking the habit of being you. And I'm going to give you 3 steps to breaking the habits that keep you feeling stuck. We're also going to talk throughout the week on who were you before you were told who to be. We're going to talk about changing your energy. We're going to talk about how to embrace your worth and have abundance in your life. And then we're going to talk about how to find joy and happiness every single day. So make sure that you sign up. You can find that at infjwoman.com/hereforthis. And yeah, it's Thursday, and Thursday's almost over, so that's good. I hope you guys have a good Friday. I'll probably be back tomorrow at noon to hang out a little bit more. Oh, and I wanted to mention too, our book club is almost over. There are 13 chapters in my book, and we just did chapter 9. So there's only 4 more weeks that we're going to do this. So thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I will see you guys again soon. So you just watched that video, and I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you want some more amazing information about INFJs, check out these videos right now. I'll see you there.